Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by MFC Lightweight Marcus Edwards. Marcus, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Marcus, you got a fight coming up October 3rd at MFC 41. With the fight basically being a week out, you're fighting a week out from today. So I'm just curious, is all the hard training over with?
This is my very last day of hard training, so today's a bit of a struggle to get through, but it just shows that I've had a great camp, and I'm right where I need to be.
Mm-hmm. Is this the longest training camp of your career?
No, actually, this isn't the longest training camp. When I first got with the team I'm training with, Factory X with Mark Montoya, I actually trained for about 6 months before I took my first fight, and it just seemed like the longest training camp. I had a fight set up, and it was about 6 months away, so that seemed to be a long training camp, because I've never really had like a training camp necessarily, and that was the first time I actually was like, oh, this is when I'm going to fight. It's a long time away, but I can set everything up and do everything right, and it just seemed like forever.
I see. I'm just curious, when did you get the offer for this fight? Obviously, opponent-wise, things have changed, but the offer to fight on this date has always been in place. So I'm just curious, when did you get the offer for this fight? Because it seems like this date, October 3rd, MFC 41, it's been forever that we've been waiting for this event.
Definitely. I got the offer on this fight pretty much right after I won my last fight. I was at the press conference after the fight, and they have all the winners there, and Mark Pavlich pretty much just announced on the podium that I would be fighting Tom Galecchio for the lightweight strap October 3rd. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've been very impressive in your 2 fights with MFC. Identical finishes in both, even though the way you got those finishes are a little bit different. But against Sean Powers, you submitted him in the first round at 4 minutes and 50 seconds. And then against Aaron Gallant, you finished him also by rear naked choke in the first round at 4 minutes and 51 seconds. So basically the same in stoppages. Now, you mentioned after the press conference, or at the press conference, they announced that you were going to fight Galecchio for the belt. Going into that fight, was that something that Mark Pavlich or Scott Zur, someone from MFC, said, hey, if you look good here, we're going to offer you a title shot? Was that something that was discussed beforehand, or was it news to you at the event?
For the most part, it was news to me. We kind of discussed it in the very beginning, kind of after my first fight with MFC, going in to sign the contract. It was kind of set that I come out and I perform and I show good. I show that I deserve a title. Then at some point in my career with MFC, I would fight for the lightweight strap. I didn't realize it would be so soon. But that's what I was working for. Regardless if it was, talked about or not, I'm always looking to be the best in whichever promotion I'm in. So, that was my goal, either way.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, Tom Galecchio, he was your original opponent. You're fighting Shane Campbell now, but Galecchio, you were supposed to fight him on this event, and that was going to be for the lightweight title for MFC. How disappointed were you when you got the news that Galecchio couldn't fight on October 3rd?
I was kind of disappointed. I must say, when Mark Pavlich contacted me, he was actually trying to get a hold of my coach, which is, his name's Mark, my name's Marcus, and I guess Mark Pavlich just got it, our numbers mixed up, so he hit me up and was like, hey Mark, how you doing, man? Unfortunately, I'm calling with bad news to let you know that Galecchio is pulling out, and this is we have a couple people in mind to fight, but that's what's going on. And I was like, oh, hey, what's up, man? This is Marcus. And he was just like, oh, man, I'm sorry, trying to get a hold of Mark, got your guys' numbers mixed up. But so as soon as I heard it, it was a little devastating. Kind of just preparing for a war for a belt. But at the end of the day, a fight's a fight. Whether there's a strap on the line, whether it's 1 round or 5 rounds, I'm going to go out there and perform to my best. And I feel like it's have an advantage. I've been training my body to go, 5-minute rounds from start to finish, and now I'm just fighting a 3-round fight, and regardless if it goes 1 round or 3 rounds, everyone can expect to see me come out there and fight from bell to bell as usual.
Now, did the disappointment come from this fight not being a title fight anymore, or was it something with Galicchio? I mean, obviously you're confident you can beat either Shane Campbell or Tom Galicchio, but were you disappointed that Galicchio was out, or was it just basically the title is why the disappointment came?
The disappointment came from Tom Galicchio falling out. I was a little disappointed by that. What I kept seeing in my head was, his face, tired and exhausted, and a bloody nose, and him saying that he was the best in Canada at 155. For him to say that while I just fought, on the card before him, I took that personal, and I just wanted to put my fist into his face, just to, show him that, the new sheriff was in town.
I see. Now, Tom Galicchio and Shane Campbell, they have very different styles. Galicchio is more of a wrestling base with submissions, and then you have Shane Campbell, who's more of a striker. Has training camp changed at all? Because I know that you're one of those guys who kind of leaves the film study and the game planning up to your coaches, and you kind of just focus on you when you're preparing for a fight. So I'm just curious, did things have to change when you went from Galicchio to Campbell?
No, not at all, man. My coach Mark Montoya is a great coach. He can dissect guys like it's no other. So, I let him do everything, and we pretty much for each and every fight, we just we train on being the best Marcus Edwards we can be. We don't train on trying to beat a guy in a certain situation or position. He may have like the guys going that are training against me do certain things or fight a certain way, but in an aspect of me training and me setting up combinations and me doing things that I do, it's just me being the best Marcus Edwards I can be. It's not necessarily training to take the fight to the ground or training to stand up with the person, or it's just to go in there and be the best well-rounded fighter I can be.
Mm-hmm. We've seen you display a very well-rounded game. We've seen you knock guys out. We've seen you submit guys. We've seen you start the fight with strikes and then finish on the ground with a submission. We've seen you do all the things that, a great mixed martial artist should be able to pull off. We've seen all this stuff from your game. So I'm just curious, do you have a preference in terms of style, either or? Would you prefer to go against a guy like Shane Campbell, who's more of a striker, or would you prefer to go against a guy like Galicchio, who's more of a grappler? Because obviously you're a very well-rounded guy, so I'm sure you feel confident you can beat either one, but if you had a preference, would it be the grappler or the striker?
Man, I'm kind of up against the fence when it comes to that, style of fighting. I love fighting the wrestler. They're looking to take me down and grind me out, and I can look for those big knockouts or the big slams, or being showing how great of a scrambler to submission artist I am, and as well as fighting the stand-up guy where I can just put everything together and get my combinations off and show that I'm a diverse fighter from my from using my stand-up to my takedowns to from my takedowns to my stand-up, and just wearing my opponent down and to allow them to realize this is a well-rounded sport. This isn't just striking. So you have to be able to breathe on the ground and transfer that breathing from on the ground to being able to stand up and breathe while you're striking and keep that cardio up. I love fighting both fighters. It doesn't matter to me. You can be a world, wide known fighter for, wrestling and, gone to Olympics. I don't mind. I'll love to fight you.
Mm-hmm. On October 3rd, you're going to be fighting in the main event. You mentioned that it's no longer a title fight because obviously Galicchio is injured, so I think you said it's just a 3-round fight now, but it is the main event for this card. Is that something that means a lot to you, fighting in a main event, or does it really not matter where you fight on the card?
Man, it doesn't matter where I fight on the card. It can be the first fight or the last fight. Either way, I'm going to be excited just to be able to step into that ring and perform and and go out there and show the world what I'm capable of. A lot of guys kind of get bummed because they have this ego thing of, I'm a great fighter, I should be fighting towards the end of the card, or I should be the main event. For me, man, I'm just appreciative that, I'm able to step into the ring or the cage, and have the skill set that I had and get in there to get the job done. So either way, it doesn't matter if I'm the first fighter out, the last fighter out, the first fighter in the cage, or the last fighter in the cage. But, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be myself and I'm going to have fun.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, Shane Campbell is your opponent for October 3rd. Overall, what are your thoughts about him?
Man, I don't really know too much about him, and other than he's a great stand-up fighter. That's the only thing I really know about him as a fighter. I don't know anything about him as a person. He added me on Twitter, so I believe just from that he's a good guy, and he's willing to accept the fight against me, and we're gonna go in there and have some fun. I love that he accepted the fight. It shows that he has no fear, and he's willing to be the best fighter in the fight, and go in there and try to get the job done. So that just sets up fireworks in my brain just to go in there and have some fun with the guy that's willing to fight.
What do you think Shane Campbell's camp is telling him to do against you in this fight?
This is a good question. I haven't been asked this question all my interviews. But yeah, no, definitely. I think they're thinking, I'm going to come out hard. In every fight, I come out hard. I push the pace. So, I think they're anticipating me to, come out hard and, maybe even shoot for a takedown. I don't think they think I want to stand up with him or, allow him to get anything put together that I immediately want to come out and, take him down and grind him out, which, could be the case. It just depends on where the fight goes, and what the movements and the dance is between us two, and what our bodies are speaking to each other. So I believe that's what they're planning on. They're planning on me coming out, pushing the pace, throwing a hard, couple punches, and shooting the takedown. So that's what I think they're anticipating.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've noticed about your game is you always mix it up. When your opponents think you're going to strike, you're grappling. When your opponents think you're going to grapple, you're going to strike. It's very unique, and from a young fighter, that's very impressive. You're in the big picture. You're a rookie in the sport, basically. I mean, you've only been fighting 2+ years, so it's very impressive to see you mix it up the way you do. Is that the key in this fight, to keep Shane Campbell guessing?
Oh man, that's the key in every fight that I go in. I want to be unpredictable. When you're unpredictable, your opponent is on the fence. He's waiting for you to do something. He's fighting you instead of fighting his game. So yeah, I love to be unpredictable, and I love to come in there and take the fight to wherever I need to take it. I don't mentally go in there and say, he thinks I'm going to stand up, so I'm going to go to the ground, or he thinks I'm going to go to the ground, so I'm going to stand up, or more or less of going in there and reading his body, and whatever his body tells my body will react, and put him in a position where he doesn't like being, or if he doesn't like to fight a certain type of fighter, my body immediately senses what he's not fit, what he doesn't like, and what's making him feel uncomfortable, and just attacks it and makes him feel uncomfortable, and vice versa. If he's giving me a problem, I give that problem a problem. So that hurts a lot of my opponents by not expecting me to fight back in certain positions, or to be as powerful, strong, explosive in certain positions where they thought they were going to have the upper hand.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, I'm just curious, who gave you the nickname Bad Intentions? Because it fits very well with your fighting style.
Yeah, it was actually a local fight announcer in Colorado named Bumpy. I had fought on the same amateur card for my first 3 or 4 fights, and every time I came out, they gave me a different name, and pretty much the third time I came out, he was like announcing me, and he was like, "There's only one thing you can call this guy, and it's Bad Intentions." He comes out and throws hands and stuff, and he just kind of explained to the crowd, and that kind of just stuck. So that's where I got the name Bad Intentions, and it's just been with me ever since.
Mm-hmm. Smart guy, that ring announcer. Because I've noticed whenever you're fighting, you always fight angry, but I mean that in a good way, because I hear all the time people say, "Oh, never fight angry because bad things will happen when you do that. You lose sight of what you need to get done." But I mean that as a compliment. You fight angry. Every time you throw a strike, you try to take the guy's head off. That's what I really enjoy about you. You're not trying to score points. You're always trying to inflict damage. When you go into a fight, do you go in there trying to hurt the guy?
I pray, to my Lord,
right.
And I ask him, that we both come out unscathed and, not hurt, a fatal blow or something. But, on the contrary, I go in there with bad intentions. I go in there to hurt my opponent, and with doing so, they, usually go down before, tremendous damage is done, or something bad happens. The fight is over. But yeah, I definitely go in there trying to inflict as much damage as possible on my opponent and make them feel like they've never felt in their life. I've been in some sticky situations in my life where I thought, okay, this is it. It's over. I'm done. My life is coming to an end, and I've got to be able to feel how that felt in the sense of reality. So I with knowing how that feels, I can project that onto my opponent, and a lot of guys see that in their mind or feel it in their body, and they're like, "Whoa, I need out." So that's where I believe I win a lot of the fights is in that aspect as well.
Mm-hmm. When you go into a fight, do you approach it as competing in a sport, or do you approach it as you're going in there looking for blood?
I wouldn't say too much of either of really looking for blood. It is a sport, and I love the sport aspect of it, of training and going in there and being competitive and competing. I love competing, and I love beating someone, but it's more or less for me more of a, you're a grown man and I'm a grown man, and we're going to see who's the best, who's the biggest, who's the strongest, who's willing to go that extra mile, who's willing to die and come back and keep fighting. So for me, it's more of I really don't know how to explain it in one simple word, but other than, I love to go in there and compete and, push my opponent to the level of, do I have it, and is this the right career for me? Because if I fight another guy like this, I don't know if I'm going to be, fighting it much longer.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, one thing I've noticed about you, and another thing that I like about how you approach the sport is, you got all these people pulling you in different directions. All these guys saying, hey, this guy is the guy to watch. This guy is the best lightweight besides the guys who are fighting in the U.S. promotions, whether it's UFC, Bellator, World Series of Fighting. You've been able to tune that out and keep the eye on the prize and shut your ears off to all these people telling you this and that. What do you attribute that to? Is it you just are surrounded by the right people, or is it you don't go on the internet and read this stuff? How have you been able to just keep your eyes on the prize?
Man, it's a combination of two things. The first is, I have an amazing group of people that are surrounding me and help me, kind of funnel everything. They don't allow, things to, be blown up as big as other people blow them up. But, and on the second, on the other hand, I've had the benefit of, living. It's not really a benefit. Actually, it's kind of a unfortunate thing. But I lived a pretty crazy life, and I got to see things happen really fast, and life can come and go really quick. And one day you may be happy as ever, and the next day your life is shattered and turned upside down. So I've had the benefit of actually living in that life and living in that moment, and having the understanding that as soon as you allow your brain to go, oh my God, I'm the best in the world, and this, that, and the other, there's a fine line that you tread. I feel I'm the best in the world, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, internally, externally, as a fully all-around young up-and-coming fighter. And not necessarily right now I am the best fighter in the world, but I have the potential to be the best fighter in the world, with the experience factor as it comes and as I learn. But I've got to, see these things happen in real life, and it keeps me humble. It keeps me, on my feet, on my toes, and keeps me hungry. So, not a lot of guys that are fighting have, experienced some of the things I've experienced in life, due to the way I lived. So, I believe I use that to my advantage, and I learned from, where I come from and then what I came from, and I keep that with me in my back pocket.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go back to MFC 39, January of this year, when you fought against Sean Powers. That was a crazy situation you were thrown into. You took the fight on 3 days' notice. You had to scramble, do all this crazy stuff to get your medicals done. You arrived in Canada at 3 a.m. with 14 pounds to cut. You accepted the fight, and you weren't in very good shape, but you still were able to pull off a W. Given the circumstances and given what you had to go through, do you consider that the best performance of your career?
Oh, man, I do. I believe that's the best performance of my career. Just due to all the elements that presented themselves and all the ups and downs that happened so fast and so rapidly within a period of 3 to 4 days. There was just so much going on mentally, emotionally and physically. It was, it was very intense for me. My body was exhausted. I was running back and forth from the hospital to doctor to gym to this, and these weren't running back and forth from 2 streets away. This is 2-3 hour drive one way, 2-3 hour drive back the other way, and I did this for 3 days straight, day and night, to try to get everything set up and make that fight happen. And it all just played out so well and so wonderful. And, I stayed true to myself, and, went in there and fought the way I fought. I didn't allow my cardio to play a factor mentally. I didn't allow my opponent to play a factor in me mentally. I knew what I was capable of, and I knew what I had and have. So I just went in there and believed that I was going to win, and I won. And and another thing that goes to show what type of fighter I am is, regardless of the situation or the fights, I show up and fight from bell to bell. Doesn't matter if I'm in the worst shape of my life. You're going to see my heart. That fight, it doesn't look like it, but that was the most exhausting fight I had ever had due to, the shape that I was in. And, for my arms just to feel like nothing. I can't even feel them. They hurt so bad, to, my legs being on fire. And that happened within the first 2 minutes of the round. And, I just kept fighting. I just kept going, and I just had that hunger in me. So that proved a lot to me mentally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, before that fight, I had heard of you. A lot of people that I talked to said that I should keep an eye out on you. They had seen you fight on the regional circuit and were saying, hey, you got to keep an eye on this guy. He's going to be doing some big things in this sport. So I had known of you before you accepted that fight against Sean Powers. But I'm just curious, how did MFC find you?
His name doesn't come to mind to me right now, but I did a radio show with him, and he had told me of his name just came to my mind. I forgot it. MMA Madhouse had was on the phone with Mark, and they were doing an interview, and they kind of told him hey, you got to check this guy out, and the fight ended up falling through on that card, and so he ended up hitting me up, and I accepted the fight.
I see. Now, I heard you say in the past that when you fought against Efrain Escudero, you had some back-to-back fights, and you took that fight on 20 days' notice, and you said that was a mistake. So I'm just curious, why take the Powers fight on 3 days' notice when the Escudero fight was taken on 20 days' notice, and you said that was a mistake? Why did you decide to take the Powers fight?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's 2 things. The first thing is, mentally, I wasn't prepared to fight. Mentally, I didn't want to fight, and I was mentally in I don't go out. I don't do anything. I don't watch anything other than fighting or, fighting or some physical, brutal, thing. So my mind and my body is, constantly around brutality or fighting or watching, technique of other types of fighters or watching the mindset of other fighters or watching documentaries on, fighting or, documentaries of the way that the mind of the body works. And, going into that, going into the fight with Efren, I wasn't there. There was a lot in my life that was going on that was scrambled, and my world was kind of upside down. And I didn't have the understanding of what type of fighter I was at the moment to say, hey, look, Mark, I want this fight more than anything right now, but I'm just mentally not ready for it. I'm in another place right now. I need time to just clear my brain and get my personal life back on track, and I can proceed to continue this, or maybe take this fight on a later date. But I didn't have that in me. And going into the Sean Powers fight was I had just came off another fight. There's a lot of guys on my team that were training for fights, and my roommate was actually training for a fight. So I was mentally in the mindset of fighting. I was mentally in the game of fighting, and I was hungry. Even though I wasn't training, just watching my teammates go and perform at their best, and showing what they can do and how great we are as athletes. I was hungry. I wanted it. I was like, I need to get in the cage as soon as possible, and that just presented itself. So that was the two different mindsets that were presented to into the projected into my fights, and you can see them. And that's when I fought Efren, I wasn't aggressive, I wasn't pushing, I wasn't shooting my takedowns to my scrambling and my stand up. I was just standing in front of them and trading punches and relaxing like I was sparring on a Friday for one of my amateur buddies that I'm trying to get ready. I wasn't being myself, and it wasn't a great feeling.
Mm-hmm. Not that it matters a whole lot, but it's in the past. But I'm just curious. Do you think that you won the Escudero fight? Because there's a lot of people out there who think you should have got your hand raised back when you fought him.
I want to say at the time I was very in the moment of fighting, and once it came to the third round and the battle ring, I was on the fence. I was like, man, this can go either way. That was the first time in my career or even in my life that I didn't give it everything I had. I just didn't. And I don't know why. It was a mental thing. That's all I can chop it up to is, what was going on, in my personal life. And that was the first time I actually let myself down, that I actually went home and I was depressed for months. I cried, actually. It was the first time that I was actually disappointed in myself, and that I felt like I let myself down. So in the fight, I felt like, man, this could have went either way. I didn't give it everything I had, and if they see it the way I felt, then yeah, I lost the fight. But going back and watching the fight on video, I feel that I actually won the fight. I feel that I actually won 2 rounds, and I definitely lost 1 round. I'm not sure which round I feel like I lost. I think it was the 3rd round that I feel that he won and he beat me in. But I was landing a lot more strikes. I was a lot more active. I was doing a lot more than what he was doing. But that's what I get. And it was a great learning experience. And that's what I chop it up to. And now I know how it feels and what it made me feel like after that. And I will never allow that to happen again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now I'm just curious. Were you undefeated as an amateur?
Yes, I went 11-0 as an amateur, actually.
Okay. So the Justin Gaethje fight, your pro debut, that was your first loss ever in mixed martial arts. What was that like after going undefeated as an amateur and being very dominant and then suffering your first pro loss in your first fight?
That was my first loss ever fighting. it was weird. That was the first time I ever lost a fight in my life, whether it was on the street, me being jumped, 3 people against me or 2 people against me. That was the first time I lost the fight. In the judge's eyes or in other people's eyes, that I lost the fight.
Right.
I still to this day haven't got to watch that fight. I've looked for it everywhere. I asked for it, but I can never find it or get it. That was a big eye opener for me. That I need to figure out what this game is about. I need to get more experience and understand when things aren't going right. That I need to relax. I need to shake off all the nonsense and start fresh when things aren't going right. Take a step back, take a deep breath, compose myself, and get right back after it. Like we just started fighting right out the gate. And that's what I learned from that fight is there was a lot of anger in that fight, like real anger that I wanted to take his life anger that I never fought with ever in my life. And I went out there and didn't listen to anybody in my corner. I didn't go with what they were telling me. I went against it, and I just wanted to hurt him. I wasn't worried about winning. I wasn't worried about losing. I was worried about bringing as much physical harm to him as possible, and that was a big lesson learned for me in as a professional fighter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm in the same boat you're in because I haven't been able to find that fight. I looked and I couldn't find it anywhere. But from what I've been able to read about the fight, you got a slow start, but towards the end you really started to crank it up. Is that a fair assessment of the fight, that you had too much of a slow start, but at the end you were doing pretty well?
Yeah, 100%. I don't feel like I had a slow start. I just feel he hit me with his hardest punch. He threw that 110-mile fastball he has. Everybody knows he knocks people out. He throws a hard right hand. And, my hand was down, and I watched it hit me. And I actually, first time in my life going down, I hit the ground, and, it didn't hurt. That was the weird thing. He punched me so hard, but it didn't hurt. And, I was on the ground, and I was like, all right, I need to work my way back up. And he immediately, pounced on me. And, I worked in that situation, in that position, but I was hurt. I stood up, and my legs were wobbly. And, that's what a lot of people got to see is holy moly, Marcus just got hit so hard, but he got up and kept fighting. I got up and I came right after him, and he realized he had a fight on his hand. And I remember after standing up and he actually hit me in the back of the head 4 times, so the ref stopped the fight and restarted us on our feet. And I remember telling him, that's all you got. This is about to be a long fight. And he just cranked another overhand right and smashed me right in my face. And I was like, and then he was like, yeah, I guess it is going to be a long fight. And then we just kept fighting, and, it was a back and forth. For me, mentally, remembering the fight, that was a non-stop 3-round stand-up war. I started coming back from, being hit, so hard so many times in the first round. I started coming back late in the second round and picking it up in the second round, and I believe I won the second round. I believe I won the third round, but that's in my mind. Obviously, I lost on the judges' scorecards. I lost all 3 rounds, but I started picking it up in the second round, and he was starting to fade away because he was throwing so much power at me, trying to take me down, and wasn't. I don't think he was prepared for a fight as tough as I made it for him. So third round, I just remember coming out, and he had his hands on his knees, and he was taking deep breaths, and my coach was like, "Get on him!" And I just came at him, and I was throwing everything I had, but I couldn't get the finish.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, you're the only fighter to go the distance with Justin Gaethje, which also makes you the only fighter that he hasn't finished. So, I'm just curious, whether it's Gaethje or someone else you fought, whether you've won the fight or lost the fight, do you still follow what the past opponents do? Do you still root for them? Do you cheer for them? Hope they do good? Because on one hand, if you beat a guy and they go on to do great things, then you beat a guy who's doing great things. And if you lose to a guy who's doing great things, then you have no shame in losing to such a good fighter. So whether it's Gaethje or someone else that you've lost to, or someone you've beaten, do you still follow them and do you still cheer for them? Do you hope they do well?
Oh yeah, I definitely definitely do. That was I was very young off my career, and Justice and Gaethje and I live in the same state, and we have younger teammates that are fighting on local cards. So we see each other a lot at cards. We talk, we hang out, and we know we're going to fight each other again. And that's the biggest thing for me is, I want each and every one of my opponents that I lose to do great and to continue to, move up the ranks, because I know that's where I'm going, and I know that's when I'll be able to see them again. I'll be able to, be lined up to fight them again to get that back, because, if I continue to, if they continue to do great, we're going to meet up at some point in time. If they don't continue to do great, I'm going to be there, and they're not going to be there. I'm not going to be able to revenge that loss. So, that's the biggest thing in my mind is to revenge my losses, and with them doing great and putting themselves in great positions, as well as myself, I feel that we be lined up to see each other again in the future.
Mm-hmm. You're fighting out of Factory X in Colorado. I'm just curious, how long have you been training there?
I've actually been training there for about 2 years, since I went pro, actually. My first pro fight was my first fight at Factory X, which that was another thing going into that fight was I had just got out of I guess you could say a bad breakup, like a relationship with my last trainer / coach that I had actually lived with and took me out of California and brought me out here. There's a lot of nonsense going on and a lot of BS that, I kind of called the person out on, and, they weren't too happy that I called them out on it, and, we ended up going our separate ways, and I had just got with Factory X, and that's why I had fought with Factory X, trained there for 6 months before I actually took my very first fight with him against Justin Gaethje, just to make sure that I was, physically ready to, fight a five-round fight, or 5-minute fight, and so I've been with him since my pro debut.
I see. So fighting brought you from California to Colorado?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay. I was curious about that, because that was going to be my next question of how you got to Colorado. But anyways, when you signed with MFC, it was for the Gallant fight, because when you fought against Sean Powers, it was just a one-off at the time, and it had the potential, if you won, to turn into something a little bit bigger. So I'm just curious, how many fights after the Campbell fight are you signed with MFC for?
I actually only signed a 3-fight contract, so I'll have one more fight after this fight. They wanted to sign me for 5 fights, and then 4, and I talked them down to 3. I don't believe in being locked into anything for too long. Whether it's just a year, contract or 3-fight contract. I don't want to be locked into something for too long, because if an opportunity presents itself, I'm an opportunist, and I like to take opportunities, and I like to take chances, and I like to risk. So, 3 fights, and I'm in or out, or I'm re-signing with him.
Mm-hmm. Marcus, just a few more questions before I let you go, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you have this very big fight coming up, so I really appreciate you being so generous with your time. But who's going to be cornering you for this fight?
Mark Montoya and my buddy Randy Caruso. He's actually Randy Caruso is actually one of the guys that kept me in fighting. After I left my left my first team that I was on, after everything had happened, I moved back to California, and I was like, you know what, I'm done. I just got, I'm not making any money doing that. I'm winning, but I'm an amateur. I'm not making any money. I need to make money. I'm gonna go back to doing what I was doing. And he ended up calling me. He was like, hey, look, I found a gym. I found a place for you to live. Everything's taken care of. We're about to buy you a plane ticket. You're going to get your butt back out here, and you're going to get back training, and you're about to go pro, and we're going to make this happen for you. Everybody out here doesn't want to see your talent go to waste. So, we all pulled together to make it happen. So, I bought you a plane ticket, so be ready to hop on it in 2 days from now. And I was like, all right, cool. And, I came back out here. So he's been my cornerman and always will be in my corner, because he knows me the best.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, when do you leave for the Great White North?
We leave Wednesday morning around 8 a.m. I should arrive there about 2 p.m. So.
Oh, I see. How about the flight? Are you a good flyer, or is that something that you've had to adjust to? Because I can't stand planes. I get sick all the time. I don't like them at all. How are you flying wise?
I mean, when I first started flying, I thought it was so cool because that was something that, like, I always been like, dang, that's so cool. Like, what type of people fly, Like, I don't got anywhere to go. I live in my bubble, Like,
Right.
At first, flying was very exciting and fun to me. But, now that I'm flying, whether it's going back home to visit or to fight some, I was at one point, I was on a plane 17 times in 1 year. And, it's just, it's exhausting. It's draining just to be around people, in that, especially when you're cutting weight and there's just so much going on. So, it's a bittersweet thing for me at the moment. But, flying and being in the air, I have no problem. I pass out, I go to sleep, and I'll wake up and get off the plane. I just don't like the people that are trying to talk to me when I'm, on edge.
Oh, I see. Well, Marcus, real quick before I let you go, do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank, and is there anything you'd like to say to the fans?
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I definitely want to thank you for, taking the time to have this interview with me. I want to thank my teammates and my team, Factory X, and all my sponsors and people that support me, from Most Barbecue to Faco Energy, Speedwear, Robusto Room, and Noble Savage. I also want to thank my mom for, sticking by my side through thick and thin, and, it's been a lot of thick and a lot of thin, so put her through a lot. But, I want to also thank, all the fans, because, I ultimately do this, for the fans. That's a big thing for me to, not to be able to have this talent and want to, inflict pain to people, but, to do it as entertainment and to do it, to excite people is something that just, that drives me and pushes me, that, maybe I was blessed with this to, be an entertainer and not to be some brutal person. So all the fans, you guys make me want to go out there and perform and make these people quit or, knock them out or have these fun, quick stoppages. So, I fight for the fans.
Marcus, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it. Good luck October 3rd at MFC 41 against Shane Campbell.
Thanks. Awesome. Perfect timing. I'm just pulling up to the gym.
All right.